What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Amante the Black Titan, and today for our next video game review, we are going to talk about the Sega Genesis. Now, the Sega Genesis, this was actually the first video game console I played. And if you don't believe me, here's a baby picture of me with the controller in hand and everything. So before we got to the Sega Genesis, you had the SG-1000 and the SG-3000, and then the Master System. The Sega Genesis is a 16-bit fourth generation console. It released on October 29th, 1988 in Japan as the Mega Drive, and then a year later we would get it in America as the Sega Genesis. Now, there was the Model 2 Sega Genesis, which is the one I have, and then you also had the Sega Genesis Nomad, which was a handheld of the Sega Genesis. The Sega Genesis is actually older than the Super Nintendo, and it was more successful here in America. You had games such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Ultra Beast, Alex Kidd, and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. In fact, Alex Kidd was the mascot for Sega at one point, but along came Sonic the Hedgehog and would change gaming forever. The Sega Genesis also had the 32X and the Sega CD. It also had blast processing power, which is why Sonic moves so fast in his games. And just like the commercial, Genesis does when the 10 don't. Did you know that Sonic's shoes are based off of Michael Jackson's boots? And Michael Jackson had some involvement with the soundtrack of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. His name never appeared in the credits, so it's unknown how much music he composed for the game at the time. Here's a closer look at the Sega Genesis Model 2. You have your power button, reset button. This is where you put your controllers in. This is where you put your games in. And then on the back, this is where you put the cables in. Here are the controllers. You have your original Sega Genesis controller. And this one right here has 6 buttons, because when Street Fighter 2 came out on the Sega Genesis, everybody had this one, and this one only got 3 buttons. So they came out with this one, so that way you have all 6 buttons for all your attacks for Street Fighter 2. So now you have your power adapter here, and then you're probably wondering, what the heck is this? This is a RF switch. So you would take this part, actually this part will go in the back of the Genesis. Then on the back of a HD TV, this part right here, it will go right where the antenna input is on the back of your HD TV or whatever TV that you have. All right, this is a new segment I'm trying out, so what better way to ask about the Sega Genesis than to ask my dad, who had the system.
Yes,
and
yes,
was
yes.
there when it was all going on. So,
Sega Genesis 2.
yeah, the Model 2.
Yes.
So my first question for you, Dad, is what was your favorite game on the Sega Genesis?
Well, on the Sega Genesis, it was the NFL 1995. I liked it because you could have extremely long quarters, and my fantasy was, can I run the score up? Can I score 100 points within a game, and can I get someone 55 sacks? And of course, if I use Barry Sanders or Bo Jackson or all those other great running backs, that I have an excellent game. It was easy to use, not as complicated, because sometimes I would get a little frustrated with complicated games. But the NFL 1995 was my favorite game.
All right. The next question is, what was the rivalry like with Sega and Nintendo?
Oh, Tecmo Bowl! I went to Pittsburgh University. I'm gonna tell you a story. One of the gifts I got, I had a Nintendo system. One of the systems I got, or games I got, was Tecmo Bowl from the residents, because I was a resident assistant. I was an RA, and that was a game that caused many fights. Most likely the fights began with someone smacking the controller out your hand because they didn't want you to make a move. Now that Tecmo Bowl game, Bo Jackson, if you had Bo Jackson, you were winning the game, because he would run these long runs back and forth. Barry Sanders was good, Emmitt Smith was good, but it was nothing like having Bo Jackson. So the rivalry between Nintendo and Sega during the time when I was in college, it was the late 80s, early 90s, Nintendo had it on lock because of the Tecmo Bowl game.
Mm-hmm. How has the system impacted gaming as a whole?
Well, it was a cheaper system, and it had, the Sega Genesis 2 was a cheaper system, and it had more games that were sports oriented. Mm-hmm. You know, not just with like characters and everything. Nintendo started off with a lot of characters, and it was from NCAA to NFL to soccer games, and they had all that stuff too. So it did change people's ability to play more sports-oriented games and not character-oriented games.
Mm-hmm. So, what was it like when Sonic the Hedgehog came onto the scene?
Imagine this, a fast hedgehog. Now, it made people more interested in seeing, can hedgehogs run fast? And they actually can. They tip pretty good. But having a character other than Miss Pac-Man, other than Super Mario Brothers, Sega did a wonderful job. Music, soundtrack too, they did a wonderful job.
All right. And my last question is, what was your favorite controller to use?
The controller that I could afford, which was the one that came with the game, you know, which we still have, I still have. And the game is still in good condition, and it works. And I pull it out sometimes. When I used to have to do overnight shifts, I would hook it up to my little mini TV, and I would play the games. But that game system was good for me. It was good as far as financially. It was good with the selection of games, even though I really only played one game all the time. And I'm glad that, you know, you have an interest, Amante, you have an interest in bringing it back, allowing people to be like, yo, explore those older game systems and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, so I appreciate it.
All right, that's all the questions. So thank you, Dad. Like and share and subscribe. And thanks for watching the video.
All right, thank you.